Evam, thus, Swachitte, in one's own heart, Swataha, by his omnipotency, Eva, certainly, Siddhaha, fully represented, Atma, the Supersoul, Priyaha, very dear, Arthaha, substance, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Anantaha, the eternal unlimited, Tam, unto him, Nirvritaha, being detached from the world, Niyata, permanent, Arthaha, the supreme gain, Bhajeta, one must worship, Samsara Hetu, the cause of the conditioned state of existence, Uparamaha, cessation, Cha, certainly, Yatra, in which. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation: thus being fixed, one must render service unto the Supersoul situated in one's own heart by his omnipotency, because he is the almighty personality of Godhead, eternal and unlimited. He is the ultimate goal of life, and by worshipping him, one can end the cause of the conditioned state of existence. Purport: as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 61. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the all-pervading, omnipresent Supersoul. Therefore, one who is a yogi can worship him only because he is the substance and not illusion. Every living creature is engaging in the service of something else. A living being's constitutional position is to render service, but in the atmosphere of Maya or illusion or the conditioned state of existence, the conditioned soul seeks the service of illusion. A conditioned soul works in the service of his temporary body, bodily relatives like the wife and children, and the necessary paraphernalia for maintaining the body and bodily relations such as the house, land, wealth, society, and country. But he does not know that all such renderings of service are totally illusory. As we have discussed many times before, this material world is itself an illusion, like a mirage in the desert. In the desert, there is an illusion of water, and the foolish animals become entrapped by such an illusion and run after water in the desert, although there is no water at all. But the lack of water in the desert should not lead one to conclude that there is no water at all. The intelligent person knows very well that there is certainly water in the seas and oceans, but such vast reservoirs of water are far, far away from the desert. One should therefore search for water in the vicinity of seas and oceans, and not in the desert. Every one of us is searching after real happiness in life, namely eternal life, eternal or unlimited knowledge, and unending blissful life. But foolish people who have no knowledge of the substance search after the reality of life in the illusion. This material body does not endure eternally, and everything in relation with this temporary body, such as the wife, children, society, and country, also changes along with the change of the body. This is called samsara, or repetition of birth, death, old age, and disease. We would like to find a solution for all these problems of life, but we do not know the way. Herein it is suggested that anyone who wants to make an end to these miseries of life, namely repetition of birth, death, old age, and disease and old age, must take to this process of worshipping the Supreme Lord and not others, as it is ultimately suggested in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 65. If we at all want to end the cause of our conditioned life, we must take to the worship of Lord Sri Krishna, who is present in everyone's heart by his natural affection for all living beings, who are actually the parts and parcels of the Lord. The baby in the lap of the mother is naturally attracted to the mother, and the mother is attached to the child. But when the child grows up and becomes overwhelmed by circumstances, he gradually becomes detached from the mother. Although the mother always expects some sort of service from the grown-up child and is equally affectionate towards the child, even though the child is forgetful. Similarly, because we are all part and parcel of the Lord is always affectionate to us, and he always tries to get us back home, back to Godhead. But we, the conditioned souls, do not care for him and run instead after the illusory bodily connections. We must therefore extricate ourselves from all illusory connections of the world and seek reunion with the Lord, trying to render service unto Him because He is the ultimate truth. Actually, we are hankering after Him as a child seeks the mother. And to search out the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we do not need to go anywhere else because the Lord is situated within our hearts. This does not suggest, however, that we should not go to places of worship, namely temples, churches, and mosques. Such holy places of worship are also occupied by the Lord because the Lord is omnipresent. For the common man, these holy places are centers of learning about the science of God. When the temples are devoid of activities, the people in general become uninterested in such places, and consequently the mass of people gradually become godless, and a godless civilization is the result. Such a hellish civilization artificially increases the conditions of life, and existence becomes intolerable for everyone. The foolish leaders of a godless civilization try to devise various plans to bring about peace and prosperity in the godless world under a patent trademark of materialism. But such attempts are illusory only. The people elect incompetent blind leaders one after another who are incapable of offering solutions. If we want at all to end this anomaly of a godless civilization, we must follow the principles of the revealed scriptures like the Srimad Bhagavatam and follow the instructions of a person like Sri Shukadev Goswami who has no attraction for material gain. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utavpada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagar Jatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyo Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Evam Suchitte Swatev Siddha Atma Priyortho Bhagavan Anantaha Tam Nirvritto Niyatartho Bhajeta Samsara Hetu Paramaschayatra. Thus being fixed, one must render service unto the super soul situated in one's own heart by his omnipotency, because he is the almighty personality of God, eternal and unlimited. He is the ultimate goal of life, and by worshipping him, one can end the cause of the conditioned state of existence. So Srila Prabhupada here in his purport, it's another standard purport of Srila Prabhupada, another ecstatic purport of his, where he reminds us that the aim of this life is to come out of the pangs of birth, death, old age and disease. This is something in conditioned life we tend to forget, and therefore Srila Prabhupada in his purports, like so many of the purports of the Bhagavatam, this is the subject matter that he is presenting, and therefore this is the subject matter we shall repeat. Even though it may feel like, oh, it's repeating, it's maybe boring, it's like we heard all of this, but the thing is, Srila Prabhupada, he gives a hint as to why. For instance, in this purport, he says that similarly, because we are part and parcel of the Lord is always affectionate to us, and he always tries to get us back home, back to Godhead. But we, the conditioned souls, do not care for him and instead run after the illusory bodily connections. So, a living entity is part and parcel of Krishna and therefore meant to serve him. We intrinsically are meant for service. We're not intrinsically meant to enjoy. And this is where the Vaishnava philosophy, this is literally the beginning of Vaishnava philosophy, is not, the beginning of Vedic philosophy is that you're not this body or spirit soul, right? Even the Karma Mimamsas understand that you're not this body or spirit soul. But the Vaishnavas, they specifically emphasize the point that the jiva is meant for service. Because the Mayavadis also don't understand this, they don't get the point that you have to serve. They think this bhakti and all this is just to bring you to the mode of goodness, so that you can understand knowledge that you are ultimately Brahman and you are everything, and that you are God. It still comes from the same platform that we are the enjoyer. And people who are affected by this concept, even though they may be religious, ultimately they pick a religion which basically reaffirms this illusion that they have, that they are the enjoyer. Right? There's a famous guy right now who's like, he's like, as usual, one of these inspirational guys, and he's what many people call obnoxiously conservative. And so he's like teaching people, how to be like the alpha male, and all his success stories, all the people that he's coaching, they have one guy is like, I have 7 girlfriends and what is this car? Bugatti. It was an Italian thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so he got that, and he had 7 girlfriends, and this guy retweets, yeah. So this is the aim of life. And so what did he become? He took shelter of a religion, which basically emphasizes that, and he puts it very clearly: we only live once. Therefore, you have to live your life to the best. And all his videos are all about him smoking cigars and, flying airplanes, and this is how, and he criticizes what his idea is, well, you all people don't know how to enjoy, and all this so-called woke culture means that you don't enjoy. But what is his conception of enjoyment? It's as terrible as this other, what they call as woke culture, because the point is, okay, so this guy's like, all this, people who are into becoming lesbians and gays and all these people, they don't know how to enjoy life. They're wimps. They're blank. So many words they have. But then, why are those people like that? Why are those people like that? The insanity of wanting to have sex pleasure has gone so far off that they've come up with all these weird ideas that you can change your gender and this and that and all this kind of crazy stuff. So, but where does all this misconception come from? Where does even the misconception of sex pleasure come from? It comes from the misconception that the living entity is meant for enjoying. Now this guy thinks that, okay, they don't know how to enjoy, but I know how to enjoy. He doesn't realize that actually what he is promoting is what has led to this nonsense. It's this. But they think, no, see, the materialistic society of the 60s or the 50s is good, but the materialistic society of 2022 is bad. But they don't understand that 2022 came about because of 1950 or 1960. And in his thing, one of the things he says, it's because he's so stupid, he says that one of his quotes, throw all your fruits and vegetables out of your house and eat 50 pounds of beef jerky. This is his idea of enjoyment. But you see, in some ways it seems like he's talking some sense, but then in another sense, it's so idiotic. You throw fruits and vegetables, and then in one of his other quotes is, you can't have a strong mind without a strong body. Whose philosophy was that?
Vivekananda.
That was Vivekananda's philosophy. Vivekananda said that you can't think strongly if you don't have a strong body. Another idiotic illusion. It's so stupidity. Therefore, he said that it's more important for people to play football than to read Bhagavad Gita. Because what will you understand Bhagavad Gita if you don't, keep your body strong? Or that it's more important to grow eggplant than to worship Tulasi. Because eggplant you can eat, no? How can you can't cook Tulasi, you can't eat. It's just, it's just worshipping. So this is demoniac philosophy. But all these demoniac philosophies, you take it left wing, right wing, conservative, this, that, liberal, they all have this misconception that we are the enjoyer. And this comes into being pious, even if you're a pious materialist, even if you're a so-called pious caste Brahmin who's very vegetarian, very pious, does all the mantras and all the pujas and this and that. But still, The bottom line mentality is I'm doing this all for my enjoyment. I am the enjoyer. And then, of course, then you bring in Mayavad, and so ultimately you're Brahman. And so you keep practicing until you achieve a level of detachment. So you understand that this is all illusion. But after rejecting everything material is illusion, what do you want to become? You want to become Krishna himself. You want to become the ultimate source of everything. You think that you are the source of it. You think you are everything. So these levels of misconception. So the Vaishnava philosophy from the very beginning attacks this root. The root of all misconception is that we as living entities are ultimately meant to be enjoyers. We're not enjoyers. We are servants. And if we don't understand that we have become servants of illusion, then we will never understand that we can become servants of Godhead. This is important to understand. We have to first understand not just that we are servants, but that right now we are serving. We are not actually enjoying, we are serving. We think we're enjoying, but actually we're serving. When we understand that we're serving, then we will understand that we have to divert that service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Krishna. Until that happens, we think that even if I think I have to become a servant of Krishna, but if I think that actually I was enjoying, or that was enjoyable, or that I was kind of in some kind of enjoyment, if there's some taste for material enjoyment, that means we still are the enjoyer. We still have the misconception that we're the enjoyer. And that will prevent us from becoming the servant of Krishna. Because we don't understand that we are actually servant of our senses. So Srila Prabhupada's emphasis on this point is not that it's some neophyte philosophy that's only meant for neophytes and it doesn't explain esoteric stuff. No, the point is, without understanding this, there is no question of becoming like servant of Radharani or something like that. It's no question. We have to first understand that we're servants. And who are we serving right now? We're serving our mind, we're serving our senses, we're serving illusion. So this is very important to understand. And so Srila Prabhupada continues over here that he says that, as we have discussed many times before, this material world is itself an illusion, like a mirage in the desert. In the desert there is an illusion of water, and the foolish animals become entrapped by such an illusion and run after water in the desert, although there is no water at all. But the lack of water in the desert should not lead one to conclude that there is no water at all. So these are the two philosophies, reactionary philosophies. One philosophy is that, okay, this is a mirage, therefore the whole world doesn't exist, enjoyment doesn't exist, nothing exists. Right? One of my Mayavadi uncles was trying to argue with me that when Krishna says, Mamai Vamsa Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha, he's saying that Jiva means the embodied state. Once the Jiva becomes liberated, he's not Jiva anymore. Wow. He is Brahman. He is Krishna. So that Mamai Vamsa Jiva Loke is because he is referring to Jiva Loke in the material world. It refers to only in the material world. Wow. It's so much craziness. Anyways, there's a whole thing I want to speak about that. But he couldn't answer when the funny thing was when I quoted Avyaktam Vyakti Mahapannam, and I was saying how the manifest produces the unmanifest. It's not the unmanifest that produces the manifest. Right? It's not that some impersonal nirguna, like quality, characterless, and Brahman without any qualities is producing, or from that Brahman came the form Krishna. It's not true. Krishna's effulgence is the Brahma Jyoti. Krishna's effulgence is that seemingly characterless Brahman. Now, he couldn't, the funny thing is, he says he accepts it, but then he keeps saying that actually it's the unmanifest that produces the manifest. And I'm like, you're speaking nonsense. It's not true. But ultimately his point is that all this bhakti and everything, this is all also, it's all also within the material world, because you're experiencing all these emotions and you're working so hard and all this. Ultimately what you have to do is you have to become a jnani and you have to stop doing all activity, that's all. No? So this is one reactionary philosophy, they reject everything. And the other philosophy is where they actually think that this mirage is real and they run after that. But the Vaishnava philosophers, Vaishnava acharyas, they point out that the mirage gives an indication of something that is real. The mirage itself is not real. The water in the desert is not real, but it's an indication that water exists elsewhere. And it is not available in the location that you're searching, it's in a completely different location. So, in this regard, the verse that Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, what is that? Chapter 15, text 1. Ashwatam prahuravyayam chandamsi yasya parnani yastam veda sa vedavit. What's the beginning? Urdhva moolam adar shakam ashwatam prahur. Is it shakha or shakam? Shakam. Urdhva moolam adar shakam ashwatam prahuravyayam chandamsi yasya parnani yastam veda sa vedavit. So, in this world there exists an inverted tree. There exists a tree that has its roots upward and its branches downward. Ashwatam. Ashwata generally refers to a banyan tree. Ashwatamenam suviruda moolam asanga shastrena dhridena chitva. He says that later. How does that verse begin? It comes in the same chapter. So he says that Krishna says that there is this tree that has its branches downwards and its roots upwards. Huh? Narupam asyeha? I don't remember. Nato nachadir nacha sampartishtha ashwattamenam suviruda moolam asanga shastrena dhridena chitva. So he says that, but this tree is basically the tree of illusion. It's the tree of illusion. Krishna is explaining the mirage in the desert because it's an inverted tree. And he says, what needs to be done with this tree? It needs to be cut. How do you cut a tree that doesn't exist?
By the weapon of detachment.
By the weapon of detachment. See, how can you cut a mirage? How can you destroy a mirage? You're not creating it. But you destroy the attachment to the mirage, and therefore the mirage does not affect you anymore. So in this way, Krishna is saying, destroy this tree with the sword of knowledge, the sword of detachment. Asanga shastrena. Asanga means to detach. Asanga shastrena, weapon. Dhridena, with firm determination. Dhridena chitva. Cut. There's Chidwa in Bhagavad Gita. So asanga shastrena dhridena chitva. So but what does it mean to become detached? It means to become, it means to step away from this mentality that we are the enjoyers. When we step away from this mentality that we are the enjoyers, or at least theoretically we have to understand we need to step away. But the way to do it is not to artificially just step, because the fact is we are thirsty. That's why we're attracted to a mirage. Otherwise, there's no reason for me to feel thirsty. And in that sense, here, the thirst of the living of a person in a desert looking at a mirage can be compared to the service inclination of a living entity. That we need to do service. We're going to do service. But the question is, where are we going to do service? Now we are serving illusion. But we should not serve illusion. That doesn't mean that we kill the service mentality. That's what the Mayavadis do. They try to kill everything. They kill emotions, kill everything, because you're Brahman and that's it. You're God, and what are you supposed to do? Nothing. What is your quality? No, we cannot describe you. You cannot be described. You're eternal, but you do nothing, and that's it. That's the state of moksha that they aspire. But this is not attractive, and it's unnatural, because the living entity has a nature to serve. And when this service attitude is turned towards Krishna, the living entity becomes happy. So therefore Srila Prabhupada explains that until we have this mentality of wanting to enjoy this world, we are caught in samsara. We are caught in birth, death, old age, and disease, because you're entrapped in this desert, and therefore the heat of the desert is going to affect you. The thorny bushes and other things in the desert are going to affect you. The scorpions will bite you. And this is just life in the desert. But we don't have to be in that desert. We don't have to exist in this realm of temporality. But rather, we can end this conditioned life by worshipping Krishna, who's actually affectionate. And Prabhupada gives a very nice example. He says, just like a mother is very affectionate to her child, but when the child grows up, he becomes distracted. There's just so many things to get distracted, and he forgets what his mother did for him. But the mother is still affectionate to the child, hoping that someday he will remember and re-establish his affectionate relationship with his mother. So similarly, Krishna is always affectionate to us. Therefore, he is situated within our heart. He is situated everywhere. He is situated everywhere means he is also situated in our heart. And he accompanies us. He accompanies us whether we've become a pig in, rolling in some stool somewhere, or if we've become, a fish or some creature. Like sometimes if you, like researchers, they always like to dive deep into some of the deepest trenches in the oceans, because there are creatures over there that have never seen the light of the light of day. They've never seen sunlight. They exist down there. They're born down there, and they will die down there. So even when you go to like literally the bottommost trenches of the earth, still Krishna is present there also within our heart. He's present in whatever life form we take, whether we go up to the heavenly planets or go down to the hellish planets. Krishna is always accompanying us, because he's very affectionate, and he devises so many ways, such as giving this Srimad Bhagavatam by making the Srimad Bhagavatam available to the people of this age. The Supreme Personality of Godhead devises so many ways for us to come to him, but the problem is we don't care, as Srila Prabhupada says, and instead run after illusory bodily connections. We must therefore extricate ourselves from all illusory connections in this world and seek to reunion with the Lord, trying to render service unto him, because he is the ultimate truth. Actually, we are hankering after him as the child seeks the mother, and to seek out the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we do not need to go anywhere else, because the Lord is situated within our hearts. So he's situated within our hearts. He's as close as it gets. If we analyze this example that Srila Prabhupada is giving of the child to a mother, then we can understand that actually for us to become devotees is not very hard. Because if you're a child of your mother, how difficult is it to re-establish our affectionate relationship with them? It doesn't take much. It's not that you have to endeavor to impress. You don't have to really endeavor to impress much. But what is needed is sincerity. What is needed is a pure desire, not a desire to cheat. Not that we try to show affection to our mother so that we can, well, I guess I want some portion of that inheritance, so let me make some show right now. That kind of cheating may work with a materialistic mother, with a mother in the material world, because she's another living entity and she can be cheated. But it will not work with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is all intelligent. So when we are sincere in our desire to serve Krishna, then Krishna will certainly help us to come back to him very quickly. It is not a difficult process. It is a very natural process. It's so natural that it slips. It completely slips our mind. Devotional service makes so much sense that it almost shocks our brains, because we're not used to this much level of sense. We're not used to this level of how real devotional service is, of how accurate and precise the science is. So the science of Krishna consciousness is a very practical process. It's a very easy process to follow. It's actually very easy to follow, because like we sing, for instance, when we sing our Prasadam prayers, Sharira Aravidya Jal, Jodendriyo Tahe Kal. So this body is basically, what is this body? This body is the mind and senses. So the senses are like networks of ignorance. They're pathways of ignorance. Why are they pathways of ignorance? You follow one sense, it will take you to ignorance. That's all. If the sense, it wants something, and you just go to fulfill its desire without thinking whether it's needed for you or not needed for you, then what happens is you're put in illusion. You're put in ignorance. That's what it is. So all the senses are pathways to ignorance. That's what they are. They're basically tunnels to ignorance, where the living entity forgets. We forget that we're servants, we're not the enjoyers, but the senses make us think that we're the enjoyers. I'm enjoying. See this soft cushion, see, I'm enjoying. I'm the enjoyer, or something like this. Well, how much can you enjoy? After some time, it doesn't feel enjoyable anymore, yeah, it's boring now, But then you seek something else. So, in this way, our senses are pathways to ignorance. And among these senses, the tongue is the most voracious. Tongue is the most, it's the most voracious. Why? Because the tongue has two functions. One is speaking, and the other is tasting, eating. And because of this tongue, we get into so much trouble. We get into so much trouble because of these two things. One is we speak things that we're not supposed to speak. This mouth is just yapping. That is controlled by chanting Hare Krishna and by speaking Krishna conscious subject matters. And how is the tasting controlled? The tasting is controlled by eating this very tasty prasadam. So therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings. So this, and another reason why the sense is very dangerous is because the tongue is very dangerous, is because the tongue, belly and genitals are all in one straight line. If the tongue is controlled, then the belly is controlled. And then automatically the genitals are also controlled. Now, if the belly is controlled, actually according to Ayurveda, all diseases in the body are because of poor digestion. This is according to Ayurveda. You have any problem in the body, it's because there's some problem in your digestion, your gut and this and that. If you put so much nonsense into that mouth and eat it, then how is your digestion system going to be? It's not going to be good. So, if the tongue is controlled, not only is it from a physical standpoint good for us, but by eating Krishna Prasadam, the other senses are also subdued, because by Krishna Prasadam the entire body, mind and our consciousness becomes purified. And then automatically the genitals are controlled. Also Krishna Prasadam is sattvic, it's Shuddha Sattva. It's pure goodness. It's above the mode of mundane goodness. But because of that, it's not putrid, it's not too pungent, too salty, too spicy, too sour. Not this kind of food. Krishna Prasadam is very wholesome, it's very healthy, it's very tasty, and it's good for your body, and it's unlimitedly good for your soul. So Krishna is very merciful. He has given us this prasadam to control our tongue. Not that we have to starve. Oh, I'm talking so much nonsense. So many people in India, they take what they call as Mauna Vrata. Mauna Vrata is very popular. What is Mauna Vrata? Means you don't talk. So I know one Mayavadi actually. He has a Mauna Vrata for 12 years. Well, good for the world, because if he opens his mouth, then he tells everybody that you are all God, and he speaks so much nonsense. So it's good in one sense that they take Mauna Vrata, but the problem is, after all that Mauna Vrata, still later whenever he opens his mouth, he's going to say the same nonsense, because he has not understood what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. How are we all God? We are not God. We're parts and parcels of God. We have the same nature of Him. We have all the characteristics that Krishna has in a minute form, but we are ultimately meant to serve Him. Those qualities that we have as part and parcels are meant to give pleasure to Krishna. And by giving pleasure to Krishna, we become happy. So, the living entity cannot become purified just by abstinence from material activity. Abstinence from material, it's not sufficient to completely purify the living entity of his material desires. What is required is connecting with Krishna. And so, the process of Krishna consciousness, Krishna Bada Doyamo, he is very merciful. And to control this tongue, he has given us this very tasty prasadam. Very tasty prasadam. Kori bare jiva jai. Swa prasadam na dilo bhai. So, oh brothers, take this prasadam which is verily nectar. It is just nectar. Swa prasadam na dilo bhai. So, that comes in. Sayana amrita pav. Sayana amrita pav. Take this Anna nectar, Anna Amrita, this nectar in the form of food, Sayana Amrita Pav. And what do? After eating that, we don't speak nonsense. Radha Krishna Guna Gav. Sing the glories of Radha and Krishna. And in love, call out the names of Chaitanya Nitai. Call out the names of Gaur Nitai. So in this way, this process of Krishna consciousness is very simple. And there is a last paragraph over here where Srila Prabhupada states about how, the holy places of worship, such as the temples, churches, and mosques, are also occupied by the Lord. It's not that we do not go to the temple, but the reason that these temples exist is because they are meant for learning about the science of God. Not that we just go there and, drink some wine and break some bread and that's it. We don't know why we're doing what we're doing. We don't understand, and we're still of the same materialistic conception. So I had several quotes that I wanted to read, but we're kind of running short on time on the last paragraph. So I'll stop here. If there are any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. Yes, Prabhu.
Like the Mayavadis, they have this false sense of ahankara and ahamta. They think, their whole goal is to give up the entire sense of I-ness altogether, to kill.
Yeah, they kill the sense of the I-ness. Yeah.
But that doesn't actually come about. The sense of they get rid of all their material desires and attachment to material objects, but they don't give up their sense of. They basically are frustrated with trying to control the world. So they try to control their senses and try to become God.
Yeah.
That's actually the biggest material desire.
Yeah. Like they say, this one famous Mayavadi said, man minus desire equals God.
Yeah.
It's not true. It's complete nonsense. So, yeah, man minus desire is equal dead.
Yeah.
Not God, means dead. What is a dead person? Is man minus desire. The man is there, desire is not there, living entity is not there, soul left, nothing exists, dead.
And the desire to have no desire, so that itself.
Yeah, desire to have no desire.
It's so completely, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, But the Vaishnava philosophers and what they teach us is we understand that real ahankara means to understand that we are actually servants of Krishna. The real service attitude, that's the real ahankara. And the real ahamta is your possession, feeling possessive about your service. This is my service to Krishna.
Right.
Properly.
Yeah.
Like the Mayavadis, there's 3 levels. There's actually this really awesome lecture called 4 Levels of Detachment. By Bhakti Vikas Majid, the long Tamil translation. But in that lecture, he speaks about how, firstly, they say, there's all this material world is not good, Then they say that, Krishna, that Krishna is mine. Then they say, I am Krishna's. But then what happens is they say, I am Krishna. That's what ruins the whole thing.
Yeah.
So these are the levels of foolishness that they actually go. They get everything right. That's why actually Prabhupada actually states that Mayavad is the last snare of Maya. We may think that, we're freed from Maya, we're freed from the influence of Maya, but we're actually not. If That's the last snare of Maya. I mean, like even after we get detached from all these world, all this stuff in this material world, still that sense that God complex can still be there. And the presence of that God complex is actually an influence of Mayavad in our life.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah, it's true.
Mayavad is actually the core philosophy of a living entity being separate from Krishna. It's not a joke, actually. You know?
Yeah.
It's not that we wear tilak and we chant Hare Krishna and we say Mayavad is a bogus and we don't have any influence of Mayavad. You know?
Right.
I wish it was that easy, but it's not. You know?
Right.
You should be very conscious of this, especially the Ishvara Bhav coming up. You know? I mean, it's a bigger thing.
Right. And, that's what when I was talking to my uncle, as he's like, oh, Jiva is the embodied. I said, so, but who, if Jiva refers to the living entity who is embodied, then who is the I? Who are we identifying with? Who is the embodied? He said, see, the problem is you're still identifying. Yeah. There is no identity. There is only Brahman. The Brahman is embodied, so Brahman is embodied, then what is illusion? That is also Brahman.
That's amazing.
But then why is one Brahman illusion affecting one other Brahman which is not? It's so craziness is like, it is just insane. Brahman Satyam Jagat Mithya, there is nothing but Brahman. Everything is Brahman. You don't understand that everything is Brahman. You don't exist, I don't exist, the mic doesn't exist, this building doesn't exist, America doesn't exist, the world doesn't exist, everything is Brahman.
But when I slap you, the pain exists.
You know? It's such a level of word jugglery, it's crazy. Anyways, is there anything else? Yes.
And like that verse itself, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, is Krishna is literally saying that Jiva Sanatana.
Prabhu, its level of insanity is crazy. I said Krishna is Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam. He's Purusham. He's Purusha. No. Purusha can refer to so many things. I'm like, what? Why don't you just take the straight meaning? It's like Purusha means person. No, it can refer to so many things. Sanatana can refer to so many things. Sanatana refers to the embodiment that has been eternal.
Wow. That's amazing.
See, the thing is, when you have a particular conception, now you have to twist everything according to that. You won't just take the straight meaning. The straight meaning says eternal. The embodiment. So if the embodiment is eternal, then when Arjuna is referring to Krishna as Shashvatam, do you consider, because that is also eternal, Shashvatam means eternal, do you consider that also to be embodied eternal? No, that is different. I think, so whenever you feel like it, it's embodied, whenever you feel like it, it's not eternal. Like, I don't know, how do you, who's the arbitrator? No, Adi Shankara said. Adi Shankara says. But so that's the problem, you see. Anyways, there's so much we could speak about this, but
maybe after the marathon we can bash Mayavad together.
It's crazy. Anyways, anything else? Anybody has any other questions?
I have to read the quotes.
Yeah, that's I'm just checking. Okay, all right. So, reading from quotes compiled by His Grace Shruta Prabhu, titled Sankirtan is our life and soul. It is Sankirtan which is the life and soul of our movement. The quotes from Srila Prabhupada presented here are in chronological order to give a little feel for the evolution of Sankirtan and preaching in our Krishna consciousness movement. We can see how wonderfully Srila Prabhupada encouraged his devotees in their preaching efforts, going from street chanting to free pamphlet distribution to book printing and distribution as our most important activity. Hare Krishna. So, this is a letter to Bali Mardan and Pushta Krishna, September 18, 1972. This street chanting must go on. It is our most important program. I have been informed by Shriman Shamasundar of your question via telephone from New York Temple, and my reply is that this Sankirtan program or street chanting must go on. It is our most important program. Lord Chaitanya's movement means the Sankirtan movement. You may simply take 2 hours for chanting 16 rounds daily. So, 2 hours. If it takes more than 2 hours, you have to bring it down to 2 hours because you're spacing out. So, take 2 hours for chanting 16 rounds daily, 2 hours for reading congregationally, and balance of time go out for Sankirtan. We must do both, reading books and distributing books. But distributing books is the main propaganda. Reading in class for 2 hours is sufficient. And other reading can be done in spare time if one has got it. It is not that one has to always be reading. 1 hour a morning for Bhagavatam class and 1 hour evening, either Bhagavad Gita or Nectar of Devotion, that is sufficient. It's interesting here that Srila Prabhupada several times actually referred to the morning and evening Bhagavatam classes as part of reading. Yeah.
Run with that one.
That's that. Prabhupada says it.
Run with it.
Okay. So far, the painting department is concerned. They have telephoned me also, so their work is very important, and 4 or 5 painters may be allowed to paint full time. After chanting 2 hours their rounds, and they may spend 1 or 2 hours on Sankirtan as it is convenient. Jadurani is the best bookseller of all, so she may go out for distributing books as much as possible if it is convenient, and does not tax her too much away from painting artwork.
Wow. How
Huh?
changed?
No, 1 or 2 Jadurani is best bookseller of all. So she may go out for distributing books as much as possible, if it is convenient, and does not tax her too much away from painting artwork. So,
Wow.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Vancha kalpatrubhyasya kripa sindhubheva cha patitanam pavanebhya